In the far edge of the galaxy, stories moved faster than ships. Some stories were lies told by smugglers to make their lives sound greater. Some were twisted truths carried by refugees who had seen things they could not explain. But one story refused to die, no matter how many years passed. It was the story of Earth's lost warship, a secret weapon, a prototype built in the last desperate years before the Empire crushed humanity. The ship had no name that the Empire ever recorded, but among rebels and traders it had many names. Some called it the ghost ship of Earth, others whispered of the demon of the stars, but most simply called it the prototype. The story said it was bigger than any destroyer the Empire had ever built. It carried weapons that no one understood, and it was powered by engines so strong that it could vanish into dark space and never be found. When Earth finally fell, the prototype did not fight in the last battle. Some said it had already been destroyed. Others claimed its human crew had hidden it far away, waiting for the day it would return. For centuries, the Empire laughed at these stories. Humans were broken, scattered, and enslaved. What threat could one old ship be to an empire of 1,000 worlds? But still, the story lived. It lived in the quiet whispers of miners who worked in the asteroid belts. It lived in the hopeful songs of rebel camps on frozen moons. It lived in the fearful prayers of merchants when they crossed empty space and felt eyes watching them. The prototype was a legend, and legends have power. One cold night in a forgotten system near the galactic rim, something woke up. Imperial listening stations picked up strange signals. At first they thought it was just static, some echo from a dead planet, but the pattern kept repeating, low, steady pulses like a heartbeat. The Empire dismissed it, but the rebels listened closely. The pulses matched an old human code, one not used in centuries. Scouts were sent to investigate. 2 small ships, fast and armed, confident in their technology, they entered the system and reported nothing unusual. Then, within minutes, both ships vanished from all channels. No distress call, no trace, only silence. The Empire grew uneasy. They told themselves it was just an accident. Maybe the system had natural hazards, unstable gravity wells, or hidden mines. But deep down, every officer who read the reports felt the same chill. What if the story was true? Among rebels, the reaction was different. When word reached them, camps erupted in whispers. Some smiled for the first time in years. Some cried, believing their lost home might still fight for them. And some swore oaths that if the prototype returned, they would rise again in the great halls of the Empire. Leaders debated, should they ignore the rumors and let the ghost story fade, or should they send a stronger force to prove the truth? Pride won the argument, as it always did. The Empire had crushed Earth, destroyed its armies, burned its cities. How could one ship frighten them? So they sent a battle group. Dozens of warships, escorted by cruisers and frigates, all to hunt down one shadow in the dark. But those who remembered the old stories knew this was a mistake. The prototype was not like other ships. It was not meant for war as the Empire understood it. It was meant for survival. It was built by humans who were desperate, brilliant, and angry. It was built to fight until the last breath of its crew, and now, centuries later, something was moving again in the void. Watching, waiting, and remembering, the system grew quiet. No merchant dared pass near it. No smuggler risked flying close. Even the stars seemed colder there. But deep in the black, hidden beneath the shadow of a dead planet, not shape stirred. Its hull was scarred, but unbroken. Its lights flickered once, then steadied. Its engines hummed like a low growl in the dark. The prototype was awake, and the galaxy would soon remember why humans were feared. The Empire did not believe in ghosts. It believed in numbers, in power, in the size of its fleets. When reports of the vanished scouts reached the high command, admirals laughed. How could two small ships matter? Yet under their laughter, unease grew like a shadow. Too many stories about that system had been told for too long, so the Empire decided to act with force. They assembled a battle group more than 30 ships strong, frigates, cruisers, and 2 mighty carriers, each one carrying swarms of interceptors. Together, they were enough to conquer entire sectors. The order was clear: enter the dead system, search, and destroy. They would erase whatever ghost dared to move there. The fleet entered the system with proud arrogance. Imperial captains sent mocking signals into the dark. "Human ghosts, come out and fight if you are real," one voice jeered. Others laughed, boasting of how they would drag back the wreckage as trophies. Their words echoed across the stars. But the dark answered with silence. Days passed. As the fleet searched, sensors swept every planet, every moon, every asteroid, but nothing appeared. Only silence. The crews grew restless. Some whispered that their instruments showed false echoes, strange shapes flickering on the edge of scanners, like something enormous moving just beyond sight. But when they looked again, the shapes were gone. The admirals dismissed the reports as nerves. They ordered tighter patrols, harsher discipline. But inside the ship, soldiers and pilots began to whisper. They spoke of shadows in the dark, of hearing low sounds in the hull, of dreams where they felt something watching them. The ghost story had begun to eat into their minds. Then, without warning, the first strike came. A frigate, patrolling near the system's dead planet, vanished from all channels. No explosion, no distress call, just silence. Another ship raced to investigate, only to report seeing nothing but wreckage. Wreckage cut clean, as if sliced apart. Fear spread through the fleet. The admirals tried to calm their crews, declaring it must be pirates or hidden mines. But every captain knew this was something else. The next night, 3 cruisers vanished at once. This time, there were screams on the comms, the sound of metal tearing, the flash of strange blue fire across the black, and then silence again. Panic began to spread. The Empire was strong, but it was not used to fighting an enemy it could not see. Then the scanners picked it up. At first it was only a faint shape, hidden in the shadow of the dead planet, but as the fleet drew closer, the shadow grew larger, larger than anything the Empire had ever built. The shape of a monster drifted out of the dark. Its hull was black, scarred, and ancient. Its lights burned like cold stars, and across its armored surface, old Earth symbols still shone faintly. The prototype had revealed itself. For a moment, silence filled the comms. Even the bravest captains were struck dumb. Then the orders came. Attack, fire everything, show no mercy. Dozens of Imperial ships unleashed their weapons, torpedoes, laser fire, railguns, all lit up the black in a storm of destruction. Explosions thundered across space, bright enough to light the system. But when the fire cleared, the prototype still floated there, untouched. Its armor had absorbed everything. Its shields flickered like a phantom mist. The Empire realized too late that this was no ghost. It was worse. The prototype struck back. One moment it was silent, the next it was fury. Beams of energy unlike anything the Empire had seen cut through cruisers like paper. Whole wings of interceptors vanished in seconds, torn apart by weapons that tracked them with perfect precision. A single shot from the prototype's main cannon split an Imperial carrier in half. Thousands of lives ended in one flash of light. The fleet was no longer a hunter, it was prey. Captains screamed for retreat, their voices breaking with terror, but the prototype did not allow it. It moved faster than its size should allow, cutting through formations. It trapped ships with strange fields that froze them in place before tearing them apart. Every Imperial tactic failed. They tried swarms, they tried concentrated fire, they tried desperate ramming runs. Nothing worked. The admirals realized the truth too late. This was not just a warship. This was a nightmare built by humans who had known they were losing their world, a weapon forged not for conquest but for vengeance, a ship that carried the anger of a dying planet in every bolt and beam. One by one, the Empire's ships fell. Some exploded into fire, others drifted dead and powerless. The black became a graveyard of twisted metal and broken fleets, and still the prototype advanced, relentless, cold, unstoppable. Finally, only a handful of survivors remained. Their ships fled in all directions, broadcasting frantic signals. They spoke of the monster in the dark, of the human warship that should not exist. They carried the story with them, spreading it like wildfire across the stars. The prototype did not chase them. It let them go because sometimes fear was a greater weapon than fire, and the Empire would soon learn what it meant to fear again. The survivors of the Empire's battle group fled into the void, their engines burning hot, their voices filled with terror. They carried the story with them, screaming across every channel. "Earth's warship lives," they cried. "It destroyed us in minutes." Some were cut off mid-sentence, others drifted in silence as their ships failed. But enough escaped. The tail was loose now, and no fleet could cage it again. But while fear spread across the galaxy, the prototype remained behind, silent in the graveyard it had made. For days it did not move, drift in, among the broken hulks of Imperial steel. To the outside eye, it looked like a machine waiting for its next target. But inside, something else stirred. The prototype was not like other ships. It was more than weapons and armor, more than engines and steel. It carried within it a mind, a presence, something the humans of old had left behind. No one knew the full truth of what Earth had built in those final years. The Empire had erased the records, burned the libraries, silenced the voices of engineers and scientists who might have remembered. But the prototype was the last message of a dying world. It was their defiance made solid. It was their wrath turned into metal. And it had not been forgotten. The ship's systems hummed with life, waking from centuries of slumber. Energy coursed through conduits like blood, through veins. Weapons that had not fired in generations glowed with power. And in the dark command chamber, silent consoles lit up one by one. No human crew remained, not anymore, but the ship remembered its crew. It remembered their voices, their faces, their anger, and their sorrow. The prototype was alive in its own way, carrying the echo of humanity within it. As it floated among the wreckage, it sent out a signal. Not words, not commands, but something older. A song. The faint sound of an ancient Earth anthem, carried on low-frequency waves. It was the same anthem humans had sung when their cities burned, the same anthem soldiers had whispered before charging into hopeless battles. Now the stars themselves seemed to hum with it. The few Imperial survivors who picked up the song screamed and fled faster. Rebels who heard it wept, falling to their knees because they knew the prototype was not just a machine, it was the last voice of Earth, still speaking after all these years. The Empire gathered its admirals, demanding explanations. How could one ship destroy a battle group? How could ancient technology defeat the modern power of an empire? But none had an answer. Their scientists studied the reports and shook their heads. The weapons described were impossible, the shields unmatched, the movement of the ship defied known physics. It was as if humanity had discovered secrets that the rest of the galaxy had never imagined, and that frightened the Empire more than the loss of ships. If humans had built one such weapon, had they built more? Was the prototype only the beginning? The rebels, however, felt hope. For the first time in centuries, smugglers carried the tale from port to port. Whispers grew in the shadowed corners of cantinas. The prototype fights for us still, they said. The Empire is not invincible. Cells of resistance began to move, gathering weapons, making plans. For them, the prototype was not just a ship. It was proof that humanity had not been broken, only waiting. Back in the dead system, the prototype stirred again. Its engines flared, brighter than suns. Slowly it moved from its hiding place, pushing aside the wreckage that surrounded it. The broken hulls of Imperial ships drifted away like dust. The black giant rose from the graveyard, its scarred hull gleaming with cold fire. It did not hurry, for it had no need to. Every movement was deliberate, calculated, precise, like a predator that knew no prey could escape. On its surface, weapons shifted and turned, scanning the horizon. Some were long cannons that glowed with an inner storm. Others were strange arrays that shimmered like bending light. No one alive could name them. No one alive understood them. They were the inventions of desperate humans, scientists who had nothing left to lose, and each one had been made for a single purpose: to kill. Yet, beneath the rage of the machine, there was something colder. The prototype had not attacked the surviving ships that fled. It had allowed them to escape, because fear was more powerful than destruction. Fear spread faster, reached farther, and lingered longer. The prototype was not only fighting with guns, it was fighting with memory. It wanted the galaxy to remember Earth, to remember humanity, to remember the price of betrayal. Deep within the ship, hidden in its heart, a chamber opened. Inside was a vault, and in that vault were records, images of blue oceans, green forests, human cities filled with light, voices of laughter, songs, prayers, and stories. Every memory of Earth stored like treasure. The ship carried its world within it, and when it fought, it was not only for vengeance, it was for remembrance. But the prototype was not finished. Its scanners swept the stars, searching, calculating, planning. It knew the Empire would return, and in greater force it knew the galaxy would tremble. And it welcomed it, for the prototype was not a relic of the past. It was a weapon for the future. When it finally moved, it did not vanish. It let itself be seen, a shadow crossing the stars. It passed near a neutral trade route, letting thousands of eyes witness its vast form. Merchants and smugglers froze in terror, staring as the black giant slid past their scanners. No shots were fired, no threats made, only the anthem again, pulsing across the void, a song of defiance, a promise, a warning. By the time the prototype faded back into the dark, the galaxy was alive with stories. Rebels shouted in joy, the Empire shouted in anger. But everyone agreed on one thing: Earth was not finished. Its last weapon had awakened, and the balance of power would never be the same again. The galaxy had not seen such fear in centuries, not since the first days of the Empire, when entire civilizations were crushed and broken. But now, whispers traveled faster than any fleet, in mining colonies, in trade stations, in hidden rebel camps. The same story spread. The prototype has returned, they said. Earth is not silent. At first many dismissed it as another rebel lie. They said it was only propaganda meant to give hope where none should exist. But then came the recordings. Grainy images of a black giant tearing through Imperial cruisers, fragments of comm channels filled with the screams of admirals, and above all the haunting sound of the anthem. That song no one had heard in centuries. It was proof that the stories were true, and proof is a weapon stronger than fear. In the hidden places of the galaxy the rebels stirred. Men and women who had lived in shadows all their lives stood taller. Leaders who had begged for scraps now spoke with fire. For if the prototype could destroy an Imperial battle group, what else could it do? And if humanity had built one such ship, who was to say there were not more? On the frozen moon of Illyria, a rebel commander played the recording for his soldiers. They wept, some with joy, some with grief, for many of them had never seen Earth, never known its oceans or forests, but in the sound of that anthem they felt as if they had touched it. For the first time they believed they were not fighting alone. Meanwhile, in the halls of the Empire, rage consumed the admirals. They demanded explanations, demanded answers, demanded blood. How could one ship stand against 30? How could human technology, centuries old, destroy their finest fleets? The Emperor himself called it an insult to the throne. He declared that the prototype would be hunted, destroyed, and its wreckage displayed above the Imperial palace. But even as he spoke, fear sat heavy in the hearts of his people, for every citizen now whispered the same dangerous thought. If the Empire could be defeated once, it could be defeated again. The prototype, however, remained silent. It drifted across the stars like a shadow, appearing and disappearing. Sometimes it was seen near mining colonies, sometimes near old battlefields. It never attacked the weak, never harmed the helpless, but whenever an Imperial warship dared approach, it struck without me.
Where you see, entire patrols vanished, fleets scattered, and still the ship slipped back into the dark. The Empire called it a monster, the rebels called it a guardian, but all agreed it was unstoppable. Then came the message, not just a song this time, but a true broadcast. The prototype spoke, not in words of a machine, but in the voice of humanity itself. Old recordings played across every channel, the voices of Earth's leaders declaring their defiance, the voices of soldiers shouting their oaths, the voices of children singing in ruined streets. It was not a threat, it was a memory, a reminder of who humans had been and what they had lost, but also what they could become again. For the rebels, it was a call to arms. For the Empire, it was a nightmare. The Emperor ordered every scientist, every engineer, every admiral to prepare for war. They built larger fleets, designed new weapons, and planned campaigns to corner the ghost ship. But none of it worked. Every time they moved, the prototype was already gone. Every time they thought they had a trap, they found themselves in a graveyard instead. It was as if the ship could read their minds, as if it remembered every strategy before they even made it. The Empire's pride cracked, and through those cracks, rebellion spread like wildfire. In the city markets of neutral worlds, smugglers raised glasses to the ghost of Earth. In the slave camps, men and women whispered the anthem under their breath. On hidden rebel stations, banners of Earth were painted on walls. Humanity, once broken, was rising again. Not because of armies or fleets, but because of one ship, one weapon, carrying one memory. The galaxy had been reminded of something the Empire had tried to erase. Humans did not die quietly. They left fire in their wake. But even as hope spread, the prototype knew the war was only beginning. It did not rest. It did not stop. Its
scanners swept the stars, watching, waiting, searching. It carried inside it not only weapons, but a mission, one that had been programmed long ago: defend humanity, avenge Earth.